Okay, so this objective truth they were trying to reveal, this secret, they were trying to get close to as we list a bunch of things that at least like maybe a lot of us can agree to in our own different ways. In order to oh wait. There's something I forgot to mention. I'm just gonna go there. So there is cause and effect, right? So in between the catalyst and duplications to make echoes and mimicans, there is cause and effect. The secret here is the in between that we don't know between how things are duplicating and mimicking themselves to become, things. The catalyzing things, these are the secretive things, and the drama of it all. Anywho, so before I go to where I was just about to go, I'm just gonna introduce the main star of the show, the Shrouded channel. So this Dear Secrets has been reframed as the Shrouded channel. So in Nexus, a Nexus is a point of convergence where things come together. Like if you were, for example, if something was happening, on like some map and you see like a red glowing dot, that's a nexus, where the things are focused, where all the energies converging, like the anchoring points, the point, yeah, where all the togetherness is, so like something that has a magnitude of effect, so, or the meeting point, for example. So a nexus is where the Shrouded channel is a nexus where secrets are canonical, like they have a giant effect, or they're sus, where secrets are sus, but then something that's secretive is kind of sus in the end because you're kind of suspicious. You're like, what's going on here? So that's what the Shrouded channel is. And this is the symbol for that. I'm going to get into the whole symbol thing later, but I'm aphantasic, so symbols are great for me. So what I Utalapakon, I'm not going to get into the whole Utalapakon vibe, but it's kind of, yeah, so what I Utalapakon has themed or conceptualized as the Shrouded channel, a nexus where secrets are canonical or sus. Right. So here you see that there are 3 dots next to fundamental undeniable truth, and it's also next to secrets, but honestly I didn't need one. I didn't need 2 of them. I just needed 1, which means that all of these things are open-endedness, or they're all open-ended, so that they're able to contain multiple variables and they're bendable, just like what I did with the paint bottle and the colors and shapes, for example. So this allows me to remember allows me to conceptualize the idea of open-endedness, and without me having to for example, you'll see it's like distributed a bit here and there, so it lets me emphasize that things are, should be bendable. Anyway, I feel like I should lie down back for this. So, undeniable objective truths and the secrets of, in between all of these things. So, right, this is where it gets a bit like, Here is a subjective interpretation of a system. So if I don't know something, right, it makes sense that I kind of like, okay, so there is cause and effect, right? Everything when observed as echoes of fundamental forms, they're catalysts, So here, let's look at let's look at this diagram as that. So what we generally, okay, maybe not generally, no, wait, okay, think about this properly, make a sound. Na 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 na. No 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 no. Okay. Well, I did use a method here, so maybe I should do that. Okay. If something generally has parts to it, right? And something is interconnected, right? Because so this is interconnected, this is interconnected, this is interconnected, as we've kind of explored, and they're part of this objective truth. And somebody were to give us this, right? Somebody said, here you go. This is what everything is. Find out what things are. This is the cosmos, right? So I have called that, I don't know if I should be getting into this, but that's fine. I've used language, right, for my subjective interpretation. I've tried to use a plain language. So let's say I say the that. What is a that? A that is, I don't know, that. You don't know what that is. If somebody says, oh, look at that, it's simply a thing that's there, right? Before they tell you that is a. It's just a that. It's just a that, right? You can point at it, but you're not quite sure of it. You is the one that's perceiving the that, right? The thing that's telling you to see what that is might or might not know what that is itself. It's just gonna look at that. Okay, so the that. That is. That is. That is. That is. The that. That is. Okay, so when something simply is, when they're like, it just is. 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 Okay, I don't think that that's really helping. My mind is doing things, but I don't think I can catch it fast enough to try to find. So when something is that I mean, it feels like explanatory, but I feel like I could expand more. Okay, if you're gonna say that something is something, you need to know what the second something is. But if you don't know what the second something is, you could just say it is something. Right? So it is something. So something is question mark. So something is because you don't know yet what the is, the is. Just like the that. So the that is the itself. The thing, the. If it's the only thing that's there, it's the. So even a that is the. Because when it's the only thing that exists, it becomes the thing, the itself, because it's alone, the itself. So the that is the itself, or the that is the itself, right? So that's a subjective kind of interpretation of the cosmos, consciousness, that is, because that prevents having to let it fit into ideas of consciousness, because consciousness itself, people have so many different ideas of what consciousness even means, right? But all of everything in nature, people can say, well, nature is not, nature is nature, but aliens are not nature, or whatever, you know? Like, that starts to confuse things. So here, I put whatever the highest nexus convergent point of the source of everything. Simple. Whatever you think the highest point is, take that, put everybody's together. Obviously, it's part of this because this is what we've been given and told that it is. You know, this is like a representation of what it is. We have our ideas of what it is, but this is what is in front of us that we're trying to observe now. You know, somebody's like, okay, there you go. I know that that's a bit suspicious because that's, you know, it invites a bit of subjectivity in, but I'm just gonna say that we are looking at this and we're like, okay, so let's figure out what this is. I have my idea of this, I have my idea of that, blah 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 already. But we're looking at this. So if we're looking at this, we need to pretend that we have no preconceived notion, right? We have absolutely no preconceived notion as to, in fact, this is not the universe, this is just this thing. This is just this thing, objective truth of what this guy is. But from where we're gonna stand, right, this top part, this is the highest, what we see as the highest part, right, from what we can perceive. So penultimate form means the form that's closest to the ultimate. But since nobody that lives, nobody can really ever tell you, because everybody else is going to be coming from their, you know, their perception, their limited perception as a human being or as a whatever it is that they are. Nevertheless, not one person can say that they know what the top for sure. So it's definitely, you know, even as we're looking at this, like, we know that we don't know how this became. So we have to look at it from penultimate form, the step from the ultimate. So now we have different observers, right? So we have observer A0, observer A1, observer A2, observer A3. Observer A dot is me. Observer A1, 2, 3 are random other people. I mean, we know it's me, but let's pretend that they're random other people, or they're whoever, somebody who's watching this is, you know, A1, A2, A3, right? So I'm A0. So I'm A1, so you can see the, what is it called, the shape here, and the color matches with some things here. Some of them, the pens are a bit confusing. So A1 here looks like this, right? So if I find that on, so this is, it's this, right? This is like a, like the, what is it called? This is this, okay? This is slightly longer, but let's just pretend like they're exactly the same. This is just to kind of show that this looks, okay. Let's pretend that they look the same, right? Okay. So A dot shape is right here. Here. So this is where my perception feels around this guy. And it's like, I feel this part. So A1 felt that. No, A dot felt that. A1 feels this. That, and where's that? Oh, it's here. Blue. So it's like this. It feels a bit around here, right? So A2 is like this. Where is A2? It gets a bit complicated now to find where A2 is. It looks like a C and a line. So there's a C and a line here. There's a C and a line here. So one must, there's also something that looks like a C and a line here where a circle. So it's kind of tough to be sure where A2 is. And A3 looks like this. Aha, okay, so this is actually probably most definitely A2 because A2 has a circle. So, no, A3 has a circle. So, blah, A3 has a circle. So this is A3. This looks more like A3 here. Okay, and A2 is here. But A2 seems to be connected with A3 somehow. Me, as I'm speaking about this right now, I'm going to separate. I know I am A1, but if I was not A1, no, I know I'm A dot, but if I'm not A dot, right, as somebody who's like observing from the outside, or the person or somebody who's looking could see that A3 and A2 are joined together. Do they know that? We don't know. We don't know if they know that they're joined together, but we can see it from where we're standing. You know what I mean? Do we know why? No. But if A2 and A3 have felt, felt their parts, maybe they know. And if they do know, maybe they know why they're joined together, right? Because we have these D signs, the distorted channel. So the distorted channel, the secret areas are here and here. So the secret areas around here. So maybe A3 is pretty close to the secret area. So it's possible that it could mean that A2 being further away is closer to the secret because maybe the secret inhibits these guys. Or maybe the fact that the secret is located here means that these guys, A3, will maybe be close to the secret, or have, I don't know, whatever all, whatever the rules are. We don't know what the rules are. We have no idea. So we're just making I'm just making, assumptions here, as though we're outside. We have no idea. We don't know. But these guys, they felt their shapes. And anyway, we're not in a network. They're the ones who are there. We're just observers. We're just making whatever from what we're seeing. But these guys who are feeling through their network, they're the ones who are going to have first-hand experiences, right? Of what they're feeling. Okay, so this, now I'm going to go back to, I don't know, I feel like I should have been naming my perceptions as I'm going along, right? So no, here I'm A0. So A0 looks at this, right? A0, A dot. I'm like, this kind of looks like a network, duplications, mimikins, catalyst, echoes of fundamental forms, blah, 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 So I'm kind of like, okay, so it looks like a network because things that have these kind of shapes or these kind of things where things are connected and they're, I could say this looks like nodes. They look like nodes because I know things like, the internet. I know about the mycelium network. I know about nitrogen carbon cycles, I know about neural pathways, even though like I'm not like, even though I might not know what this is specifically, I will know that things have echoes of fundamental forms, and the things that I've seen that have this kind of vibe structurally, your internets, cloud, nitrogen, carbon cycles, neural pathways, social hierarchies, thought networks, cognitive and cognitive, the cognitive and beyond cognitive into the sensorial fields kind of networks, qualia networks. Qualia is basically the very, 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 very specific, new and subjective experience of, I guess, a being, right? So their own inner associations. Mentalism is also kind of like inner language. So let's just say like the very, like, as subjectively as you can get to the things that are not describable, the ineffability of the way the mind works, cognitive, like, sensation of the stimuli of, I don't know, existing within a body. Let's just say that. So those have networks, right? They have networks in, like, for example, this goes from point A to B and this affects this. They have like they have causal links, right? Cause and effect links, right? So I'm like, kind of looks like a network. Interesting. Cool stuff. So I'm going to be like, okay, right. So it's a network. So, but in order to maintain, it's within this whole system of the that is the itself, I would have to fit in this idea with that, right? So if with language that makes it as plainly structural as possible. So the that is the itself here is S. So one of the ways in which it duplicates itself or mimics itself or whatever it does, one of the way it does things is by movement. Not movement as in, movement in that sense, but by like some kind of direction, you know, like if we, some kind of direction. So I'm saying a rhythm. So a rhythm, a resonance of that is the itself, right? So one of the resonances are things like words, like logos, right? Logos is like words or, you know, qualifying things, right? So the rhythm that that itself, the that is qualifying. So network, for example, is kind of like a word, right? It's qualified by use of a word like network, you know, which is a form, a rhythm that S has become. So this is a network. S take S, the rhythm that this network takes is by the word logos. So connections, right? We can say that networks are interconnected, but we cannot assume the connections, right? So these connections must be deduced, which is what we did here. So we tried to do. So A dot felt, A1 felt, A2 felt, A3 felt. They tried to make deductions, right? So A dot is me, right? This is my subjective human self. You know, I'm not going to get into the rest of the things now. But so that's me, A dot. I'm limited by what I can see and what I know, you know. So now A1, A2, and A3 can make observations on their respective shapes, but each of them being only a small part. You know, we can have had observer A4, A5, A6, A7, A8, whatever. So we only have like what, four observers here. So each of them can only make observations on their respective shapes, right? Neither of them can make judgments as the full picture, you know, based on the conclusion of only the, you know, the small parts that they can see, you know. So each of them must be aware, and we don't even know if they're aware, right? We don't know that right? We don't know how, like, if A1 thinks is the only one here, you know, or A2 thinks is the only one here, or A3 thinks is the only one here. We know that A3 and A2 are connected, but what if, like, they think that, like, what is it called? They can only see as far as they go. And this D here makes it difficult for these two guys to know that they're even attached. We don't know that, so each must note, or yes, each must note that there is a open-endedness and the possibility of a variable. I don't know if that's a thing, you know. I guess me as A dot is saying that. I'm saying that, you know. Maybe I know that. Maybe for some reason I'm like, yeah, it definitely makes sense that I'm connected to something. Like what I feel in this shape gives me, like, lets me know something, right? That maybe I don't know whether the others know or they don't know. So I'm asserting, right, as A dots, that, you know, everybody, whoever, you know, I mean, assuming here I'm saying that, I mean, I know that A1, A2, A3 because I wrote it, but let's say A dot does not know, and A dot just says everybody else who's here, because I know that I'm not the only one, has to make the observations on what they can see, just like I've seen what I've seen, right? So I'm saying that all of them must note that there is an open-endedness, right? In whatever forms that it chooses to show this open and endedness, you know. So for example, I'm saying, based on what I've seen as A0, this should be A0, that we need to examine things in terms of space, right? Like the spatial relationship to things, the position wise, where I am in this network in relation to cause and effect. So what affects what, which is deduced from trial and error. For example, when something does something, right? When emotion is introduced, emotion as in when, this trial and error is being conducted in whatever rhythm or form that this takes, right? So here I say this because when I was examining my shape, right, when I was feeling through my shape, a dot there, I was doing some experiments, right? That's how I know the things that I've said here, right? So for example, I've made a motion. I made a motion, and in my motion, I I note that more connections appeared here. I suddenly see, oh, something is sprouted out of me over here. They look like more connections. So I'm like, connections. What does connections mean? Connections means that something is connected to another thing. Or I don't know that yet. I only find that, I find that out, right? So here I first discover that when I do this motion, more things appear. I've not named them yet connections, right? I'm like, oh, more things happen here, and I then shake it or put a different motion, and I'm like, something here happened, something duplicated itself here. And I'm like, duplication. It really is given that things are leading to things here. So I named that connection. So more connections appear. Here I'm like, okay. I feel like I'm making myself confused, to be honest. So let me just take a moment. I'm like, okay, connection, another connection, something else appears, but I'm like, because it looks exactly like this, I'm gonna name that duplication. So I'm like, okay, a duplication shows a connection, because a connection is when something new happens, right? But here it looks very similar to that, so that means it's a duplication. So I'm like, right, so I made a conclusion, right? I'm like, so if something seems to affect another, we can safely assume a direct or indirect correlation. So if I shake it this way, these things happen here. If I shake it this way, things happen here. And I could, keep experimenting, and I just keep finding things. And I can make assumptions that things are direct or indirect. I mean, I could be wrong, I could be right, you know? But the more I check, the more I get, maybe more concrete results. And I'm like, okay. So I find patterns, right? I start to find patterns. A1, A2, A3 are all doing the same thing. But let's note that there are all these things here that we can see, the storage channels. We don't know whether what is it called, A1, A2, A3 can see them, or whether even me as A1 can see them. But that gets really makes all of these things that I'm saying kind of more confusing if I start to keep putting myself, but it's important to distance, So now we're not looking from the viewpoint of these guys, because these guys are in the system. They cannot, like we're outside the system. Let's say we're more omniscient or whatever. We might say we're omniscient, but we're not there. So yeah, that's kind of difficult to say. But having all of these D's here, we know that these mean secrets. So, we need to understand what these guys are, right? We need to start experimenting like this until we get close to some hidden secrets. So before I go on to the next part, I'm just gonna give some examples of what the shrouded channel is. So things like, it's the realm of mystery, the code, like coded encryptions, protective shields, incubation mechanisms, for example, like birth, death, growing, or like enwombment is the same thing with like birth, right? Growing. Enwombment. So like pre-gestation or post-gestation. It doesn't just have to be birth like of human beings. It can be birth of ideas, any kind of like knowing, the beginning of knowing, the beginning of the crystallization of anything really, the growth stage. Hermit modes, for example, people tend to like use it, I don't know, in different areas. Let's say like the spiritual thing, or tarot, for example, or I'm a hermit, I'm not going outside to socialize, preservation of energy, all of these things. So yeah, so we tend to see it in like things sense of, you know, esoteric things tend to be, you know, associated with like mystery, right? Mysticism, it's in the name, the mystique. Logos, so the logos, okay, the logos of the logos or metaphor, so words that are associated with darkness, you know, metaphors for darkness. It's very similar to birth, death, you know, it's like, again, the darkness of, okay, now where am I going with this? It starts that way. I mean, you can like use ultrasounds or whatever, but before there was ultrasounds, D was a bit more pronounced in this. You know, these things became revealed as time went on, right? Before any things like all of that, things like ultrasounds were developed, these things was definitely way more mysterious. Before, you know, so many of these things were known. They were more rooted in the D, but the D was more anchored in these words, in these qualifications of them, to make them less mysterious, but nevertheless, they still are fucking mysterious. Anyway, so ideas like prayer, for example. Actually, before I go to prayer, I should say like things like that have been strategically obscured, like the dark web, like passwords or keys. You know, all these things. They are fall under the secret realm. Again, we're being very open-ended, being very open-ended, being very bendable, to be able to see underlying principles across many ways as possible, where these ideas of secrets are pronounced in whatever we can put our finger on in this realm of reality. If we're gonna get closer to objective truth, then we're gonna mitigate D within the objectivity of truth. If we're gonna get closer there, we have to reduce that, right? Okay, so I also have things like I think I already mentioned, I don't know, Chrysalis, you know, the whole thing, and that's, I guess, it's a grand metaphor for D, right? Chrysalis, breaking opening necessary for flight, kind of vibe. Dreams, these kind of things, shamanic trips. Oh, wait, I feel like now I'm mentioning like subsets. Yeah, I think these were general things, you know, all these things, and then they are like but you know what, that doesn't matter. So D can be seen in, dream states, altered states of consciousnesses, prayer, different types of prayer, meditation. There's something I want to mention about this, but I feel like I should wait. I should wait for this. People who have near-death experiences, right? So that goes on to the kind of altered states of consciousness, you know? The whole thing with like DMT and things like this, you know? I think that's actually one of the things that made me very suspicious about the Shrouded channel. It was one of the things that spiraled this, it anchored. It was like one of the roots that let this grow inside the mind, I guess. Anyway, the quantum state of superposition, being both here and there. I feel like this whole thing needs to be properly spoken about, so I'll be very, very, I'll just be very listy about things for now. The cases of attempted suicide, I feel like I should set trigger warning before that. These are also parts of the shrouded channel, the secret things. Because I guess when you do, you're kind of close, right, to the edge of NDE. In so many different ways, the way you feel about it, what you experience. You know, there's so many aspects of these things, right? Super big trauma, you know, and then I have like neurospectrum situations here. And all of these things, you know, it requires a lot of, I need to go into it properly. But if I start mentioning things now without being able to explain it properly, I think I might kind of get lost. I'm kind of tired, so I'm going to stop there. So next time, I think I'm going to talk about the things I mentioned with the prayer, meditation, NDs, the neurospectrum things. I'm going to talk about how that relates to the shrouded channel, and how these the things that I mentioned allow for quantum states of superposition for things to be both here and there, like overlapping possibilities. So maximum potential of possibilities, influx or influences of information, and how, the idea of quantum interference applies to all of these things and how they all kind of look alike. Even like sleeping, being both here and there. Yeah. Oh. Anyway, so yeah, I'm gonna get into a lot about it, and I'm gonna talk about, social, cultural, religious, capitalistic, patriarchal things, and how that has an effect on the deed, and how that needs to be mitigated. Right.